Physics Day 2, Unit Conversions and Sig Figs. Here we'll convert from 16 kilometers into miles. First thing you want to do, now this is a pretty straightforward one because you're going from a single unit into another single unit, and we know the direct conversions. Now, with a lot of problems in physics, if there's multiple ways of doing them, it increases the complexity because there's 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 ways of doing this problem. But I'll do it two ways, the two most direct ways. First of all, if you look up in the tables, you'll notice that 1 mile, so you look these up. I don't expect you to memorize these. 1 mile is 1.609 kilometers. Or, if you're looking elsewhere in the table, you notice that 1 kilometer is equal to 0.6214 miles. So we can use either one of these facts to solve this problem. So I'll show you both ways. You'll get the same answer. All right, this is once again a direct one-stepper, and we know the direct conversion. That makes this one, quote-unquote, the easiest one. And by the way, once we get rolling on these, probably 80 to 90% of our conversions are these one-step conversions. You know the direct conversion, the most popular ones. Here's one technique. And in general, on the first test, I want you to show work because it'll be a test on conversions. But after the first test, you can do all your conversions off to the side without showing work. But here's one way of showing work, which I expect on the first quiz. You have 16 kilometers. Some people call this the factor label method. And you're going to multiply by 1, a fraction that's equal to 1. But for example here, I'm trying to get rid of kilometers. The way you would do that is you'd put 1 mile in the numerator of a fraction. That's equivalent to 1.609 kilometers. That was the factor we looked up over there on the right, the conversion factor. So 1 mile over 1.1609 kilometers it would reduce to the number 1 because they would cancel out, they're equal to each other. So I'm not changing mathematically the 16 kilometers, I'm just converting it. And the reason I want the kilometers on the bottom, as you remember from chemistry, is that the kilometers will cancel. And then when you do the math here, it's just 16 divided by 1.609. And if you do that in your calculator, you'll get like 10 sig figs. But how many sig figs did you round off to? Well, the conversion is to 4 sig figs, but the original data is 2 sig figs, so you should have 2 sig figs in your answer, 9.9 miles. That's your answer. Excuse me. All right, so that's showing you work there. Now the other method would have been 16 kilometers. This will give you the same answer times another fraction that is equivalent to 1. You could put the 0.6214 miles on top. Once again, the miles have to be on top because that's what you want to end up with. And then the 1 kilometer on the bottom. So in this case, it'll be a multiplication problem, but the kilometers still cancel out. If you do the math there, once again, if you go to 4 or 5 sig figs, you get a slightly different answer than the other one. But if you round off to 2 sig figs, using the 16, you still get 9.9 miles, because we're only good to 2 sig figs here, given our data has 2 sig figs. Same answer either way, you can check that out. So that's a one-step conversion with the known conversion factors or given conversion factors that you will have on the next test. Let's do another example. Example number 2, which is quite a bit more difficult than example number 1 for 2 basic reasons. First of all, it's a compound unit, like miles per day and meters per hour. By the way, an M just by itself means meters, not miles. The other thing that makes this more difficult is it's just weird units, and there's no direct conversion. I mean, we know from the previous page the conversions from, say, miles to meters, that was 1 mile was 1.609 kilometers. We'll just use that one for example, and you can look up some of the other conversions on that sheet. But if you start off, and here's how I like to do this one, and once again, there's variations on this. Because there's variations, there's several other correct ways to do it, but I'll do it one fairly direct, correct way. So I start off with 25 miles per day. If you write it like this, It might help the structure and the presentation. 25 miles per day means the same thing as the slash. We'll do these one at a time. Once again, if you know a direct conversion from miles per day to meters per hour, you can do it in one step, like the previous problem, and treat the miles per day as one unit. But we're going to do these as separate units, miles and days. Let's start with the day part of this. I'm going to convert days into hours. And I need days on top. So for example, one day, this is one of those things I expect you to know, is 24 hours. Just like 60 minutes in an hour and 60 seconds in a minute. One day is 24 hours. And a year is 365, close enough, 365 days. Things like that I expect you to know. Those conversions off the top of your head. But the 1 mile equals 1.609 kilometers, I don't expect you to know that. Anyway, we're not going to do the conversion yet. We're going to do this in one big long step. There's several steps we're going to join together here. If I stop now, I mean, basically the days would cancel, and I would end up with the answer that's in miles per hour. But let's get rid of the miles now. Like the last problem, I need miles on the bottom. I have 1 mile, because I'm going to need that to cancel, is 1.609 kilometers. Now, a clever person might already know that that's 1,609 meters. That would have been a more direct way to do this problem, but I'm going to assume I forgot that fact. The miles are going to cancel. If I stop now, I'm going to have kilometers per hour. So the other factor or step I got to put in here, 3 steps. The third step is converting from kilometers to meters. In other words, there's 1,000 meters in a kilometer. Once again, look that up or remember that from your metric prefixes, that 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. And the kilometers then would cancel. And now you're ready to go to your calculator, multiply all the numerators, divide by the 24 hours in the denominator, and the answer comes out in meters per hour. And you should go to 2 sig figs, because the original problem, the 25 miles per day, was in 2 sig figs. And if you do the math here, that comes out to be 1,700 meters per hour. All right. If I was asked to do kilometers per hour here, that would have been 1.7 kilometers per hour. All right, let's do another example. Let's say we have a really tall person, like a Goliath type person, 9 feet 5 inches tall. We want to convert that to meters. Now, we don't do this in 2 different parts. What you have here basically is an English unit of 9 feet 5 inches, but let's put it to just inches. It says 9 feet 5 inches. This doesn't say 5 in. It's the IN there means inches. And we're converting to meters. M is meters. So for example here, 9 feet, and once again you could do this off to the side if you want to. You wouldn't need to show this, but there's 12 inches in a foot. This is pretty basic. So 9 times 12 is 108 inches. So the 9 feet is exactly 108 inches by definition. Then you have plus the 5 inches. So we add 5 inches onto the 108. So we have a total of 113 inches. We have a person, a Goliath type person, or something that's 9 feet 5 inches tall. Well, it's 113 inches tall. All right, we're going to convert that to meters. And once again, you might know the exact conversion from inches to meters. Let's say I didn't know that. What I do expect you to know, and I put this in the notes, in the intro notes on page 2, and we'll discuss that in class again, but I do expect you to know how to convert from inches to centimeters automatically. In other words, what I expect you to know is that 1 inch, you'll need to this is one of the very few things all year you need to memorize, is 2.54 centimeters. That's by definition. That's exactly 2.54. That's not a rounded off or a measured value. It's by definition. We've linked the English system actually to the metric system at this point. So 1 inch is exactly 2.54 centimeters by definition. A lot of other things are calculations and measurements, but that's a definition. Anyway, if you do the math there, which we won't do yet, but if you did it, the inches would cancel, and we'd end up in centimeters. Well, now we got to convert into meters. So that's one more step, which I'll write down before I actually do this. 100 centimeters, it's a metric prefix that I expect you to know, is 1 meter. That's a conversion we'll be doing a lot. 1 meter is 100 centimeters. Centi is 100. Kilo is a 1,000. Well, a centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. It's 1/100th of a meter. Kilo is 1,000 meters. Milli is 1,000th of a meter. You can look those up in the tables. We'll practice that in class. But 1 meter stick has 100 centimeters. Those cancel. You can do the math now. And this comes out to be, now the question is how many sig figs? If you go back and look at the original, 9 feet 5 inches, looks like it might be 1 or 2 sig figs. Actually, it's 3 sig figs. It's determined by this value right here. So 9 feet 5 inches, if we assume that that's been measured to the nearest inch, is 113 inches in 1 unit, inches. That's 3 sig figs. So we can go to 3 sig figs in this particular problem. And if you do that, you end up with 2.07 meters. That's our conversion from 9 feet 5 inches into meters, 2.07. Let's do one more example. And finally, let's do this 35 centimeters cubed to inches cubed. We had to do something like this in lab, so let's review that. And it can work the other way around too if you're going from inches cubed to centimeters cubed, just the opposite of what I'm showing you. All right, what I expect you to know is centimeters to inches, not centimeters cubed to inches cubed. Once again, you can look up maybe the direct conversion if you can find it in a table somewhere, which you might be able to find the direct one-step conversion from centimeters cubed to inches cubed. Because it's different than from centimeters to inches or inches to centimeters without the cube. Anyways, we have 35 centimeters cubed. But what I do know is that 1 inch, once again I'm expecting you to memorize this, is 2.54 centimeters. Now a couple ways you can deal with this. You can take that fraction I just wrote there and cube the whole thing. Cube the 2.54 at the bottom and cube the 1. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1 in the numerator. And 2.54 times 2.54 times 2.54 is actually what's going to get you to where you need to go. That would give you centimeters cubed. Or you can write it out like this, which is really the long way to do it, so I don't really recommend it doing this way. But I just want to show you that this can work. 2.54 centimeters. Okay, and then once again, do it 3 times. In other words, you're going to divide by 2.54 3 times. Keeping in mind, like for example, if you were converting from square units, like if you're measuring an area, like if you had 35 centimeters squared, you would only do this twice. Which I guess makes sense. Anyway, so you're dividing by the cube of 2.54, not just by 2.54. And if you do all that, once again paying attention to sig figs, how many sig figs should we have? Well, 35 is 2 sig figs, so our answer should have 2 sig figs. It comes out as 2.1 inches cubed. Once again, always include units in your answers. 2.1 inches cubed, 2 sig figs. And that's how it's done. Good luck. We'll talk to you in class.